Hello, everybody. Welcome to day 4 of our summit. I can't believe we're on the penultimate day of this event. I feel like I've spent so much time preparing for this, and now we're just at the very end. So I'm really grateful for all of you who have tuned in over the course of the week. And if it's your first time tuning in, thank you for attending tonight. We're really happy to have you. Tonight, I am going to be chatting with a fellow Twitch affiliate, EmoSupportJamie. She is also a Thanos guild member, just as I am in a couple of the guilds. we have our badges of honor, and she's a mental health professional as well. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that and how it ties into everything that she does as a content creator. But without further ado, I'm going to actually let you introduce yourself and share a little bit more about you and what we'll be chatting about here.
Sure. Hello, everybody. If you don't know me, I am EmoSupportJamie, but you can call me Jamie. My pronouns are she, her. I am a Puerto Rican mental health professional, licensed clinical social worker. My full-time job is I have my own private practice, and my fun-time job, I guess, is streaming on the side. I don't know why I called it that, but it felt right. And I'm also a new mom. I have a 9.5-month-old. So yeah, I also, have my own struggles with mental health. And I am very transparent about that and really like to, be authentic in my experiences on streaming and talking about, my own struggles and things that have been helpful for me as well.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking about parenthood a little bit, especially because it's not something that I personally relate to, but I would love to hear more of that side of your story and what that might mean. And there might be some of you in the chat who are parents or are planning to start a family and would like to have that extra insight from someone who is on the professional side of things and also has that lived experience. So very, very excited to get into this. So let's start with our first question. So you did mention that you're a mental health professional. So how long have you been in this career? And what's a key takeaway that you'd like to share about the journey you had to get to this position that still resonates with you now?
Yeah, it's been a while. So I'm a licensed social worker. I went to grad school for my master's degree in social work back in 2011. It was in my program, it was rare for people to go straight from undergrad. So I was one of the few younger people in my program. A lot of folks actually made social work their second career. So it was really interesting just to get a wealth of experiences with the other people that I was in my program with. I went to UPenn. The acronym is SP2. It's School of Social Policy and Practice. So 2 Ps, you get it.
That makes sense.
Graduated in 2013 and have just been doing everything ever since. I've done school social work, foster care. I've worked on different sides of criminal justice. So I've worked with survivors of crimes. I've worked in alternative to bail programming, and then finally made my way to private practice. So a wealth of experiences. And I think there's 2 things that I feel very strongly about in my career path. One of them is, I think people always say oh, do you know what you want to do? And I think that's a really loaded question for a lot of people. I think it's just as important to pay attention to what you don't like, because that also helps you carve out your path. Social work in particular, something I'm very passionate about, but it is a very like wide breadth of things. You can do so many things with this degree. It is not, a lot of people do, go into becoming a psychotherapist, but a lot of people do lobbying work. They end up in governmental positions like NGOs, nonprofits. There's a lot that you can do. So if there are things that like are not working for you, do not feel like you have to commit to something, and pay attention to those things, because I think that's just as helpful in like helping us figure out what we do want to do, what we might be passionate about. And it might take some time. And so that's part of like paying attention to those signals. The other thing that I like hate, and I've said this because I'm also a Latin Guild mentor, is I hate gatekeeping. I hate gatekeeping. There is a lot of gatekeeping in this field, and I don't get it. But I feel very strongly that you do not have to pay your dues before moving into something that you are passionate about. If there is something that you want to do, you should not have to, do a bunch of things that you don't enjoy just because other people are like, well, you have to do child welfare or foster care before you go into private practice. I disagree. I think you should get experience, but I don't think that you should be forced into, doing something because the other people also had to take a really long time before they finally moved into the thing that they really wanted to do. I think that's silly. And if you're passionate about something, why can't you explore that? So that really grinds my gears.
I can agree, and I can resonate with that because for some time I was considering going into education, and I know that a lot of people that get degrees in social work become teachers because they realize somewhere along the way that they don't want to do social work and they don't want to go into psychology, but they know that there's that level of intersectionality with the classes and they can take different coursework and kind of pivot into education. So I feel like that's something that a lot of people don't think about when they're going into this kind of journey, I'm sure. And I'm sure you look back and there are parts of your journey that you're like, I wish I didn't have to do that to get to where I am now. But you learned something. And now you're here to tell other people, do as I say, not as I do, which sometimes is a little bit of a blessing. And you can kind of like shrug your shoulders a little bit like, hey, I'm here to teach you something.
I've seen some things.
Yeah. And it's so cool to hear more about the specific fields that you went into, because I didn't know some of the portions of what your experience looked like before you got into your private practice. I knew that you had a private practice, but that's just about all I had knowledge about. And I feel like a huge part of me asking this question was to get that insight, because I know you've been doing this for a long time, and I had a feeling that you just had like a really cool journey to get to where you are now. So thank you for sharing that. I wanted to move into a question that's a little bit more about you and your identity online and what that might look like in translation with the work that you do. So what does your online identity allow you to explore or express about yourself and your advocacy journey that traditional mental health spaces usually don't?
Yeah, this is also an excellent question. You're a great question writer, asker. You're so welcome. I think that, content creation has always been really interesting to me, and trying to figure out like, what space can I kind of take up within that. I think that obviously like within the mental health field, there are a lot of rules and ethics that we have to abide by in the professional space. And like, I also take that very seriously. Like, again, like I'm a social worker to my core. Like I feel very strongly about the ethics, but I think that in this space, I am not necessarily wearing my like exclusively social worker hat, and I get to be a lot more candid and creative to the approach in discussing mental health as opposed to like traditional talk therapy. So there's a lot more flexibility. There's a lot more, again, like authenticity. Self-disclosure is part of the work that I do, but I think it looks differently in this space where I don't have to be concerned about yes, I'm concerned about what impact the things that I say about my experience have on, my community, but it's different when you're using self-disclosure in like a therapeutic sense where the goal is usually to create some kind of like therapeutic alliance or build a rapport with your client or help them feel like seen and validated in their experience. But it's not about like you as the therapist. Like the focus is still on the client. Whereas like here, this is a community that like I have helped foster and grow and build. And like I am more at the center than, in my therapy role. So I think that using self-disclosure and talking about myself and my experiences also helps with that like connection and feeling heard and validated and seen. And I can kind of lean more into that in a more candid way.
That actually reminds me a lot of a conversation that I had with Stephanie, our guest from yesterday, who she's a theater actress and she's also an educator in the space. So she does like vocal coaching and public speaking classes, things like that. We had a really great time talking about that. And she shared how there is a little bit of a sense of divide between her lived experiences that might resonate with a character that she's playing. So it makes me think about how that can translate to how you might feel within your full-time work compared to being a streamer. Because when you're streaming, you can feel more open about those things. But when you're with a client, you might have to hold back a little bit, even if you can relate with that client and you might have experienced the same exact situation that they're experiencing, but you have to kind of say, well, this is what I would do without saying, this is what I did when I went through exactly what you're going through right now. So it's a little bit of masking in a different sense compared to what neurodivergent people might do in a regular space out in the world just existing. So really cool to kind of put that correlation together. So this is a great segue into my next question, actually. I love how this has just worked out for me. This has been great. So you've talked about streaming as a space where you bring your full self. So you're a therapist, you're a gamer, and just to give a little more context, Jamie is a cozy variety streamer. So she plays a lot of cozy games, but also likes to have more of a variety in horror kind of feel to her content. So what inspired you to combine your clinical work with being a content creator and not kind of like separating the two? Because you could have gone into it saying, yeah, this is what I do for a living, but just not really talk about it in your content, but you choose to be open about it. And has this changed now that you're a mom?
Ooh. I think that, historically, that's a silly way to start this sentence, but I have always enjoyed video games historically. That's why I was like, why did I say that? But I have played video games for like my whole life. Like I am in my mid 30s. My first console was like a Game Boy Color, with the little light, playing Pokemon like under the covers so that my mom wouldn't yell at me for like being up super late.
And you had
So
school
yeah,
the next
back
day. Yep.
in my day. Yeah, I'm old. In the content creation world, perhaps I am old, but I think that like, video gaming has always been my biggest form of self-care. And like, I'm very aware of like, I love to just like, decompress and lean into playing anything. Like I've spent so much time on The Sims, Roller Coaster Tycoon, like just so many things that like I recognized was really important to me to like help me kind of just decompress and disconnect from other stressors. And so I think that's really what like inspired my journey into content creation was like my perspective was like I am a mental health professional, but also I need ways to kind of relax too. And I think that there's something here to like share with people because I'm sure that they are probably doing something very similar. And then kind of bringing the mental health aspect, taking that like a step further, and talking about my own experiences. I think becoming a mom, I think there's several challenges. One is like a time thing for sure. There's something that my partner and I have talked about is like there's a little bit of ego death when you have a baby because the world no longer really revolves around you. You kind of have to, take care of these little sacks of potatoes. And to be fair, that is how he started. He was just like a sack of potatoes, and now he's like a smiling, engaging sack of potatoes. But like really finding time for yourself, I think has, over time we've kind of figured out different strategies so that like each of us can prioritize that time. So it's I think, if you have like they say it takes a village, like truly, having the support to be able to find that time for yourself. But I mean, my streaming primarily has taken place either after 7:30 p.m. because that's when my son goes to bed, or during like pockets in the middle of my workday, when we have a nanny share with my sister-in-law, who also had a baby like a month before me. So, somebody is always with him during the day, but like between the hours of like 4:30 and 7:30, I'm exclusively on baby duty. And like, I recognize, that's just a part of my routine now. So kind of figuring out how to still find time for myself within my new normal. But I think it is important because like it's a whole new identity that I'm still taking on. Like I still don't quite feel like a mom. It's only been 9 months as opposed to like the 30 something years of my life. So it's a new hat that I'm wearing. But I think finding that time for myself has been so important in order to like make sense of this new identity. So like that's something I feel like these are the things that help us feel whole. And so I think it's really important to like figure out those ways that help us maintain ourselves so that we can show up and be a good enough mom. See, I didn't say a perfect because that's not real. A good enough mom, a good enough employee, a good enough friend, a good enough partner. Like that is something to aspire to be, and that's important.
I love that, especially because you mentioned all of these other aspects of your life, like being a friend, being an employee, being someone's significant other, being you for all that matter. And I feel like that's something that parenthood can easily take away from people. Like you just all of a sudden become, okay, I'm parent now. That's it. And all of those other pieces of yourself either go to the wayside or just non-existent in your mind, at least. Like obviously you still are that person in literal sense, but figuratively it's like, no, I'm just a mom now, that's it. And then when that child is old enough to go to school, for example, then you're like, oh shit, like what do I do now? Like I have all this time for myself, literally, because they're in a whole other place for X amount of time, 5 days a week. You've lost yourself. So how do you get back to that? And I know this is something that's like way down the line for you right now. So not trying to like make you feel like intimidated by it, but I feel like you've, on the contrary, set a great precedent for being more prepared for when that time comes. So it doesn't feel like your world is crumbling because you made being a mom your world. It's just a little part. This is very silly coming from me. A little part of your world.
Mermaid jokes.
I really wish we had a soundboard, but
Part of your world.
Exactly. But yeah, it's great to hear that that's something that you're not letting become such a huge part of your life, that you're putting yourself as a lower priority. And I'm sure that came a lot from being like a co-working streamer too, because you already have that mindset of, okay, I'm going to divide my time and make the most of it and get everything that I can done, and also make time for breaks. So that's already a natural thing for you. And you make it a part of your day-to-day as a creator and now as a person. So that's really cool.
At least try.
Yeah. And now I wanted to talk a little bit more about everything that we've discussed, but in the lens of being Latina. Because there's so much stigma being a person of color.
What?
And mental health. So fun. So
that's wild.
How has being a Latina mental health professional influenced how you show up online, especially with the stigmas that exist within Latin homes surrounding mental health?
Yeah, it's definitely fun and interesting to pursue a mental health career. Luckily, I guess it's not wild, but I have an older cousin who also pursued social work. So having an ally within my larger family has been really helpful. And she's always been someone that I really admired and looked up to. And so it was very inspirational, and I think kind of helped bridge the gap for, how my family might perceive me or us in the work that we do. But still definitely get, some very interesting comments from my parents who are just like, oh yeah, well, haha, we should probably go to therapy. We never will. And I'm like, you realize you're talking to a therapist. Sorry, what?
They're undermining the work you do.
Yes, while still kind of
don't understand
it. No, it's this very weird parallel of both undermining and also still being but you're an entrepreneur, you're a business owner, good job. And it's but also what? I'm confused. But I think even more than so that's my own immediate family, but I think larger is there's just so many biases that revolve around mental health and how people perceive mental health, and a lot of different cultural identities and other backgrounds. And I think one of the most helpful things for me is getting really comfortable with education and psychoeducation, and not being afraid to lean in to challenging other people's preconceived ideas. And that's not even just from being Latina, but just from people not understanding social work, for example, I think is a really good, a good way to bridge the gap of a lot of people have very strong ideas of what they think about when they hear social work. A lot of them have been shared directly with me. And this was as early as still being in grad school, because we also do internships. So we're actively in the field doing work while also learning about what does this all mean? What does this work mean? And on a macro, on a meso level, obviously on a micro level, I've had so many conversations with people just being no, I'm not trying to heal your baby. I'm actually, doing all of these other things. I'm treatment planning. I'm putting together resources. I'm providing therapy. I'm doing intakes. I'm doing diagnosing. I'm like doing support groups. I'm like helping people apply for financial aid. I'm doing a lot of things. And I think that that honestly, those conversations I feel have gone more successfully, perhaps compared to kind of challenging some of the other stigmas around mental health when it comes to my Latin identity, which is kind of funny. And I think that there's maybe more flexibility in some areas of helping people understand the breadth of certain things, but I feel like that ongoing challenge of you know, talking about feelings is perceived as a sign of weakness, as a very big core stigma. I feel like that will continue to be an ongoing challenge. I think that we've come a really long way.
Yeah.
And there's so much work that's been done. But I also think, speaking of boundaries, I think having firm boundaries for myself personally of deciding which battles I want to fight and which ones I want to try not to extend too much of myself or my energy into so that I don't burn myself out.
I love that. And it you know what? I feel very validated right now because I feel like I deal with that as an advocate alone. I can only imagine how it must feel for you being in the space and just people expecting you to just have all the answers. And it's
Yeah, I don't.
yeah, you went to school for this and you know a lot and you can go into trying to do conflict resolution, having a general idea of what could help. But that doesn't mean that what people within the industry that you work in say is buy the book and this will work and this is effective. And if you don't do what I say, you're not going to improve your mental health and you're not going to find success because it's not a linear process.
Yeah,
And
it's not one size fits all.
Exactly. It's very, very custom to the person, to their upbringing, to any mental ailments they might have or not have, because let's face it, even neurotypical people have their struggles that they deal with, and it's going to look a little bit different how they cope and find ways to feel better about it. So I love hearing that this isn't just something that those of us who are neurodivergent and or advocates and speak on these topics feel like I know that this means something to me, but I need to take a step back and I shouldn't feel guilty about it. Mm-hmm. It's very validating to know that people like you do that too. Because it's okay, so I'm doing the right thing.
Absolutely.
I'm still practicing what I preach, despite not getting involved in every single situation where something might need input relating to mental health and coping with it. So that's
rest is productive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like it's just common knowledge that if you don't rest and if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of others. But sometimes we don't do as we say. So it's just sometimes.
Just a few.
But you had talked about misconceptions being a person of color, but I do feel like there are so many others that can just stem from being an advocate and being a mental health professional. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit. What's a mental health misconception that you often see in online spaces like ours or just in the whole vast internet that we have full access to at all times, especially with a new generation of young people becoming influencers alongside us? Because let's face it, millennials, we just interpret the internet very differently because we've had it since teenagehood, or maybe like later childhood. Younger generations are born into it. Like, they literally come out the womb with an iPad in their hand. So I would love to hear more about your perspective on that and the misconceptions that younger generations may be feeding into the internet that you're just like, yeah, no, that's not right.
I mean, something that I've seen a lot, and this is something, not that like I experienced burnout early in my like content creation experience, but I think that the misconception is that creating content, like how much time is involved with creating content and the impact that it has on managing burnout. I think that there is this misconception that like it's just so easy and like you just put out the videos and you have so much free time and flexibility. But the reality, while yes, like there is a luxury in being able to set your own schedule if you're exclusively creating content, or even if you're not, like even if you're doing it part-time, like you decide when you want to do it. What's free time?
Free?
But but this is not your typical 9 to 5. This is not like your like you can, I think for some people they can certainly like kind of create a routine and a schedule that works for them. But I think the reality, and I also say this as someone who has their own business, like my private practice is my business. I also set my own schedule, but like I'm getting emails outside of the times that I'm meeting with clients. And obviously I'm not responding to emails while I'm meeting with clients. So there's other time that I need to dedicate to admin time. And like that is outside sometimes of my typical 9 to 5. While I talk about boundaries and how sometimes I'm good at them, other times I'm responding to emails whenever. Weekends. I like to be responsive. I have a lot of gripes apparently, but one of my gripes is therapists who don't respond to inquiries in a reasonable amount of time, which I think should be like 24 hours or less. So I feel very strongly about responding to people, especially if they're in crisis. Like there's nothing worse than being in crisis, and a mental health professional can't just like respond to your email, even if they're fully booked. But anyway, I think that figuring out, like, people throw around like find the balance, and I don't think that there is one type of balance. I think you have to figure out what volume of time you want to commit to creating content, and also like figuring out where downtime can exist. Because like I had mentioned, when I first started streaming, I think that I was working very diligently to like create content on multiple platforms, like on TikTok. And I got to this point where I actually had a video like go like kind of viral. And then I was like, I have no other ideas. I don't know what else I can do here. Like, and I just fully stopped making content on my TikTok. And then I also took a hiatus from streaming. And I was just talking to my partner about this the other day, of like, sometimes I kind of felt like I maybe shouldn't have taken that hiatus. But he was like, I think that hiatus helped you figure out how much time you wanted to dedicate to this in like a healthier way. And now your approach to creating content is like, just you're in a much better headspace to be able to do it sustainably and not burn yourself out. Because if you continued on that path, like you just would have been done and never continued with it. And I think he makes a really good point that like I was on this path that like I wasn't going to be able to keep up with, and I was already seeing some of that, and I just needed to like do a hard pivot to reset expectations for myself. But I do think that that's part of the misconception of like it's a lot more time consuming, but also you can figure out how much time you want to dedicate to it.
Yeah. God, it's never like a solid answer when it comes to that, is it? Especially when you have a full-time job. And in your case, it's like that is your business. So it's all you. It's not like you're reporting to somebody else, which I feel like eases a lot of that pressure, but obviously there are still like those parallels. Like I personally, I have a full-time job, then I'm a guild leader, and then I'm like a content creator who hasn't streamed in like 5 months. And that's why
Hey, you're here
because
you're creating this content.
yeah, exactly. It's like I'm trying to find ways to balance it out, and I may not be going live on Twitch 3 times a week like I used to, but I'm doing something. I'm creating something. I'm still allowing myself to be a creative person, and it's filling that cup for me. And then maybe when things slow down a little bit in other sides of my life, I can go back to Twitch and feel like, okay, yeah, I can make sense of this now and not feel like I'm spreading myself thin. But at the same time, I feel like there are people that are like, no, I'm just going to completely stop. Like, I'm done. I'm not going back to Twitch. I'm not doing anything creative. And then when you have that free time, you're like, oh, well, you know, I'm feeling really creative right now. And I have nothing that I can do because I said I'm going to stop streaming. So now what? So it's a matter of finding those little ways to just be like, oh, well, I may not be playing games on my channel, but at least, you know, I'm participating in this community. I'm signing up for a collaboration. I'm doing a panel like this, for example, or I'm just showing up for other streamers that have the bandwidth right now and that I really appreciate, and I'm being a part of whatever they're doing. That's still being creative. So I think that giving ourselves that grace is important, and more power to you for being a business girly and still doing the thing. Cause I don't know. I don't know if I could. I probably would still give it a try and maybe not be as present as you are, because I will say you put in a lot of effort to try and broaden your horizon with the content that you create. But yeah, it's just really cool to see that you're just like, no, I like doing this. I'm going to make time for it. Might not be as much as I used to make or that I would like it to be, but there are only 24 hours in a day, and at least 8 of those I need to sleep. So
Yes.
we'll
Oh
see what
God,
we
I would
can do.
love 8 hours.
Maybe 6, 5 or 6. I feel like if you can at least get 6 hours of sleep a night, you're doing something for yourself.
Ideal.
I did stream at PAX, but it's because I was there and I signed up for it and I was like, I gotta do this.
But it counts. You did it.
Like I will say I was running so late for that stream that morning. I had a panic attack on the way there because I thought I was going to be super late. So was it worth it? Yes, in hindsight. But I'll tell you right now, when I sat in that chair and I put that headset on, it was not worth it. It was not worth it. It's really a matter of counting your blessings and making the most of your time. So y'all get 6 most times. Yeah, let's move into more of a community-based kind of conversation. So, Jamie, how do you approach building a safe and affirming environment for your community without putting yourself in a constant helper role?
Yeah. I mean, I think, good old boundaries really continues to be the theme. And I think that comes in a lot of different ways. I think like setting very clear rules and expectations. And if you can be like, I mean, sometimes it's hard to be proactive. You can try to anticipate where certain challenges might come up, or, you know, a lot of like labor intensive things might come up, so that you can like be protective of your energy and not always feel like you're in the helper role. One of the things that I do is like I share and I'm transparent that like I am a therapist. But I also clarify that like what I am doing is not therapy. I am not doing therapy in my streams. I'm not meeting with anyone as as a therapist. Again, because of the very rigid ethics and rules that are involved with my profession. But it's a different set of skills being used. So I think that like being very clear about like who I am, but also like what I am not able to do and offer, and like sticking with that. It's like, you know, I'm happy to share things again, like from my perspective of like, this is what's helped me. Like, I think those anecdotes can still be helpful without someone being like, okay, so I have anxiety, Jamie. You need to tell me what I need to do right now. And it's like, actually, that's
Actually,
not.
no.
And but I will say, like, it's hard because, you know, like parasocial relationships and all, ultimately, you know, a lot of people come to this space again, like I said, like as a form of self-care. But some people are really struggling. And I've certainly had people come into my streams and have like shared very personal, vulnerable things going on and how they're feeling. And like they are really precarious conversations, but I try to make it very clear of like what I can and can't offer. And one of the other proactive things that I do is I have like passive timers in my chat that are frequently posting mental health resources. So
Yes.
it's both a chat command, but it's also something where like I don't even have to think about it. That's like one of the ways that I felt like being proactive would be helpful, where it's like I don't have to think about it. It will post periodically on its own, and I even put it as like a panel. So I just want to have the resources available to people so that if I'm like, hey, like I hear what you're saying, and like I want to make sure that you have support, but like I can't be your individual therapist, but like here are the resources that you can explore. That is like the very firm boundary that I will continue to hold. And while also still feeling like I'm able to like provide some kind of care in like an empathetic, compassionate way.
I love that. And I think that that's something that mental health advocates commonly have on their channels. So if that's something that aligns with you and you would like to have more of that approach with your channel and with your streams, a little bit of a shameless plug, come to the segment tomorrow. We're going to have to write Love on Her Arms here, and they're going to provide resources that you can use in your streams. So just do that. And this is coming from two fellow streamer ambassadors for To Write Love on Her Arms. So I'm just saying, you might want to come in. But there is Twitch Cares as well, which I feel like is very underrated and not spoken about enough, which is a great tool. You can just Google Twitch Cares, and it's a list of resources and hotlines, text lines, websites that can help you provide some resources to people in crisis in your chat when you're just not feeling quite equipped to handle that, but you also don't want to kind of leave them in the shadows feeling like you're not supporting them and you're not providing them some kind of help, because we can't do that for people, especially if we're not professionals in the space. It's just not something we do. But even if you are like Jamie, it's not something that you should be expected to do, because you need to protect yourself too. And those kinds of conversations can get really heavy, and it's a Twitch chat is just not the space for that. It's not. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And also like being mindful of other community members who might, you know, be upset at that content as
And
well.
triggered,
So
yeah.
it is, yeah, you really have to like kind of navigate some really challenging situations.
And it also makes me think of something. I always say this, you never know who's watching. And obviously that can apply in different spaces, but in this context, it's like you never know who's actually lurking in the stream and will feel uncomfortable or overstimulated or triggered in any way, and they'll just leave and they won't ever tell you that that's why they've decided to step away from the community that they've been supporting for who knows how long and haven't said a word, just because of how a situation like this was handled. So definitely something to keep in mind. And I think that Jamie's a testament to how to handle those kinds of things and make sure that even those who aren't saying anything feel safe and feel validated and protected by you and by the community. So just to start to wrap up here, because we're getting close to time, what's one piece of advice that you would give to someone who's always the strong friend in their community? And I feel like this is a great way to talk about it as not necessarily just a streamer, but also a community member and someone who supports different spaces as a viewer. Why am I getting called out? You're welcome.
These are not personal attacking questions. I mean, I think it's always helpful to be reminded that like there truly is, it is really hard to ask for help. Like it's really hard to do that, but the strength that it takes to do that, like I think that there's a lot of fear about being a burden when you're leaning on somebody else. And really like pushing through those thoughts. Like those thoughts are lying to you, that are telling you that that you're a burden, because you're not. And it's a really powerful thing to be able to ask somebody else to support you when you might always kind of be in that position of supporting the people around you. And I think if anything, like it is telling who is there for you when you need it. Because like you have committed so much to the people you care about, that when that compassion is reciprocated, like it's very empowering. So pushing through the fear of not wanting to lean on others and asking for help.
Yeah, I think that if anything, that helps you build more trust with the people that you're connected with, no matter how close or maybe acquaintance like you might be. I think that it's still important to build that extent of trust with the people that you spend the most time around. So having that strength to say, hey, I'm needing support right now, or on the contrary, I'm not at a capacity to provide the support that you might need, but I'm still here for you and I still care about you and we're still friends. I think both are just as important, and that is still you being the strong friend. Even if you're in context sharing a little bit of weakness by saying, I'm not at capacity to provide you what you're needing right now. You're still being strong in that process.
Absolutely. There's strength in sharing your like limitations in that moment. And again, there's a boundary that you're setting of like, I don't have like the full capacity to take this on right now, but like, I love you and I care about you and like, I want you to be okay. And when I do have, like, I will reach back out when I like feel like I have refilled my cup and like, I want to be there for you.
Yeah. And I want to talk a little bit about spoon theory, because I feel like it's a great example of what this conversation will look like. So for those of you who might not be familiar, spoon theory is primarily used for people within the ADHD spectrum, but I still feel like neurodivergent and neurotypical people alike can relate to it to an extent. So you have a stack of spoons in your hand. Let's say you have 10, right? And going to work requires half of those spoons, so 5. because you spend like 8+ hours a day at work. So you take those 5 out of that stack. You're like, okay, I don't have those 5 spoons anymore. I only have 5 left. What am I going to do with those other 5 spoons? I need to make sure I keep some for myself. I need to make sure I keep some for my family and my loved ones. I need to make sure that I have some in case of a crisis as well. And also make sure you keep spoons for fun, because you need one for ice cream, right? So think about it in that way. At least 1 spoon for ice cream. Mm-hmm. And then the rest, just use them very sparingly, because when you get to the point that you have no spoons left, you might need to borrow some from a friend, but there may be times that that friend won't have those spoons to give. So you don't want to get yourself to a point where you're trying to desperately seek out the rest of those spoons and you don't have anyone that you can depend on to at least loan you one. So I think that's a great way of just putting it in a more literal sense and being able to visualize it. And I think that that's why a lot of neurodivergent people use it, because it's a way to see where your energy is going and make sense of why sometimes you might need more spoons for something else compared to another thing. And just take that as a little bit of a reflection. Yeah, ice cream at TwitchCon. That's a great metaphor for, you're going to a public event that is crowded and loud and busy, and there's so many friends, and you're only one person with all these friends, and you might need to take a step back from all of these wonderful people that you love dearly and you care about, and you want to spend all this time with them, but you're only one person. Make sure you conserve some spoons for ice cream at TwitchCon. If there's one takeaway from this segment tonight, it's at least 1 spoon for ice cream at TwitchCon. And I love how yesterday we talked about ice cream too in our segment. This is a very common theme.
Mental health and ice cream go hand in hand.
They really do. They really, really do. All right. I think we might have time for just one more question here. So I want to continue to keep that light note going of the ice cream. So I'm going to leave with this one. What's something that's brought you softness or peace lately?
Ooh. So I'm going to still say this because I think it still counts, but I've been toying. Something that I really want to do is like lean into my creativity more, because I deeply want to be a creative person, and I think in some ways like it comes more easily, and in other ways I'm like very challenged by it. One of the things that I like have a deep curiosity about is Dungeons and Dragons. And I've never done it before. And so my friends have been bullying / gently encouraging me to
looks like a couple people in chat are fans
to do it with them, and are introducing me to a one-shot. And then also I recently got Baldur's Gate 3, so I've just been like leaning to that. And then one of these same friends also gave me their Dropout account, so I've been watching Dimension 20 for the first time. So I've really been fully leaning into like all of this, because this taps into my like trying to be anti-perfectionist, but I really want to be good at D&D, and I think that is why I've like avoided it. But like that's not what it's about, and I just want to lean into like the creativity of it. So I'm like trying to gear myself up for this one shot, and then potentially joining like an actual campaign. So
Ooh.
that is something that like kind of brings me peace, but like stresses me out a little bit, but mostly peace, because I haven't started anything yet.
I have only experienced D&D just watching other people play, so I can completely understand where you're coming from. I think it's really cool, but the idea of creating a character and the dimensions that go into that, it's too overwhelming for me. So I leave it to you all who are enthusiasts. I love watching y'all do your thing. It's so cool. It really, really is, but it's just not for me. But just know, Jamie, we have a huge community of D&D fans across all the guilds. We've got some here in chat. I know quite a few guild leaders who are also like huge fans and just do this all the time. There were people playing D&D one-shots in the Unity Guild Lounge at TwitchCon last year. So,
oh, that's so fun.
You're in the right place to find your people. If you are looking for someone who can educate you about the process and what it might look like and best practices, all of those things, there are folks that are more than willing to bring you on and just say, yes, one of us.
Teach me your ways.
So I think that's really cool because it's just from my lens, being someone who doesn't partake, I feel like it's a form of improv and acting that is very gaming related because of the nature of it and what the characters might look like and sound like and what the story might entail, and the dungeon master themselves, how they handle going through that journey and taking moments to be like, yes, I give you permission to do that, or no, that wouldn't work because of this rule or this character or whatever it is. And having all of that background and being prepared to do all of that, I think it's so sick. So it's a really cool way to work that muscle of improv that we as streamers use all the time, but in a different light where you can pretend to be whatever you want to be. And you don't have to be Jamie. You can be whatever character you've created. That's really cool.
JMO.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
We'll work on the name.
Hell yeah. I love it. I love it. All right. I would love to give you the opportunity to say one last final thought, whatever comes to mind for you right now, and we'll leave the conversation at that.
I mean, I think that like if you consider yourself a mental health advocate, know that you don't have to do this work alone. Like you don't have to do it in a silo, and know that you can lean on your other advocates. You can lean on others within this space. I think more often than not, like people are so willing to help and support one another, even if they struggle with it themselves. But there's so much compassion for one another in this space. So do not feel ashamed or afraid to connect and lean on your fellow advocates.
Absolutely. It's why we're here right now, because we've made it known that that's something that matters to us and means a lot to us within our content. And we wanted to share the conversation with more people. So if this is something that you would like to chat about with like-minded people, we're a message away. And on that note, where can people find you, Jamie?
You can find me at EmoSupportJamie on all socials, Twitch, Blue Sky, Instagram, whatever other ones there are. I forget all of them. There's so many. I don't know, every social media, all the things.
All the things. All right. Thank you so much, Jamie, for your insight. It was really cool to hear more about how multifaceted you are beyond being a professional, a creator, a parent, and an advocate, because those are just 4 segments of who you are as a person, and I feel like everyone deserves to have a Jamie in their life. So thank you for sharing some of yours with us. And yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for being great.
No, you.
Making me so comfortable.